Cultivating Conservation. I'm Shannon Dill. In this module, we're going to discuss whole farm planning. A whole farm plan is really a comprehensive approach to farm decision making. It's going to use the entire farm and all the resources in the thought process. The purpose will be to help farmers achieve goals while at the same time enhancing natural resources and the environment, as well as quality of life. Developing a whole farm plan consists of a couple steps, and these are very cyclical. You can see here that they really relate to each other. The first step is assessing resources. What resources do you have access to or available to you for the farm? The next is to write a plan with some specific goals in mind. The next will be to monitor the tools and measure the progress towards goals. And then finally, it would be evaluating and replanning as needed. We know farms change over time, so it would be replanning and going back to assessing resources again and setting new goals. So it's really a whole farm plan is sort of a continuous process, but sitting down and really thinking, stepping back and really thinking about the farm as a whole. You may have a number of plans in place, if it's a conservation plan, if it's a nutrient management plan, if it's a business plan, but let's see how these work together to make sure that we are achieving some very high level goals. So as I mentioned, the first step is a resource inventory. And this is, again, stepping back and looking at both physical or maybe skills that are available to the farm. So gather those resources, try to get an inventory of those. I'm going to share a couple charts that can help organize those. And the first one is these physical building and facility requirements. So what land is accessible, what facilities are available to the farm, what equipment is available, transportation, then the expertise or skill level that is needed. Perhaps it's in something like computers or marketing, or maybe it's something related to production and fertigation or spraying or grafting. So what skill levels are there, and might find some skill levels that may be needed. So this is the sort of a building and structure inventory. So a very important piece, especially if you're doing some planning, because these are permanent structures, right? So you build a barn, you can't move it next year when you wish you had it in a different spot. So building and structure inventory is nice to have to figure out the purpose of those, the square footage, where they're going to be located, and what features need to be in there to be able to move the farm forward. Maybe it's a section now that can be converted to a packing house, or maybe it needs to be climate storage, or there's refrigeration needed. So really step back and think about those things. We also realize farms generally have a lot of equipment, tractors, implements, vehicles, UTVs. So some type of equipment inventory that lists these out. These are very valuable, not just for this whole farm planning idea, but it's also for insurance and for your balance sheet to have a listing of all your assets. So the facilities as well as equipment are really great things to update on an annual basis, maybe at the end of the year. Sit down, go through equipment, anything that's been sold, anything that's been purchased, and add those in one location. And if you're visual, I kind of like to see a map, and especially if you're doing some planning, if you're considering conservation, if you're considering putting in some permanent structures, is sitting down, you can get an aerial picture of your farm or map of your land. You can go online to the maps and look at the satellite imagery. You can get sketches from Natural Resource, NRCS, or Farm Service Agency, or you can start with just some graphing paper and sit down and kind of key out what are the items that you have, where are the structures, where are the buildings, where's your house, where's that personal space. If you're putting up fencing, if you're designing lanes or water points, Those are all really helpful to have sort of in that farm map and sketch layout. You can also get soil maps at the same time if you're with them. We're also going to show in another module how to access the soil maps, but they are very helpful when you're making some of these mapping solutions. So you might think, well, the lowest areas maybe where I want to put conservation practices because I want to use my highest and most productive land for my crop production or my pasture system. So think about that as you're putting together this whole farm plan, and the soil types as well, not just the space. So what are goals? Goals are statements of what an individual, family, or business wants to achieve. And there's a couple different categories: production, marketing, and financial. And there's short-term and long-term goals. Goals can be used to help provide focus and direction for management. Where is the farm going? Where are we moving forward to? They can serve as reference points. So you can sit down and say, okay, we have, this is where we're headed. We want to, we've achieved this. Let's move forward to the next one. So they can be a reference point for the farm. They can help aid in decision-making if you're looking at making some purchases or hiring labor. And they can also serve as a rallying point for the family. Like, okay, let's get together. Let's get this done this week. Planting season or harvesting season could be part of the goals where you kind of rally together and like, okay, let's get this accomplished. And so that's kind of how goals and goal setting can be used. So farm businesses goals can include, as I mentioned, the production, marketing, and financial. So maybe it's product yields, efficiency, perhaps it's the conservation side of things, marketing, it's sales, distribution, and advertising. Perhaps it's financial, related to net worth, cash flow, or cost per unit of output. It could be legal if it's related to estate planning or land preservation. Perhaps it's personnel. So that's the management, hiring, maybe skill development, and then personal. So don't forget that family side of it. Perhaps it's assets, maybe it's something related to quality of life in the household. So 7 steps to setting goals. Assess past activities. What have we done in the past? What's worked in the past? What do we know we can accomplish in certain timeframes? Assess those family and farm resources. So look back at those inventories. What do we have access to? What skills do we have? Develop a general management plan. Okay. These are the regular activities. And then you can start to identify and establish specific goals and objectives. Once you have those, you'll need to prioritize because time is generally a very limiting factor. And then develop a plan of action to implement the goals. And then always, as I mentioned even earlier, kind of do that measurement of your progress and reassess. So things are constantly changing in the markets, in the weather, in maybe your farm system. So always kind of reassess those goals. And be sure that they're SMART goals. So SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. And so very vague goals are not often achieved. Like, I want to make more money. Okay, well, like how much more money? Or I want to do conservation. Okay, let's get more specific. Let's sit down and work through some SMART goals. So specific are kind of some action items, what you want to do. Measurable is includes numbers and target areas. Maybe it's a percentage, maybe it's an acreage, maybe it's a bushel, maybe it's by the pound, but some type of measurement. Achievable, is it something that you can accomplish? Is it relevant? Does it make sense to you? Does it improve the business? And then is there a specific date or time frame that these need to be accomplished by? And there's some goal pitfalls out there. So try not to make goals too lofty. Maybe set a couple steps in place that to reach those larger goals. Try not to do too many things at once. Again, that time management thing. Overemphasize number estimates. So try to use the best numbers you have available to you when you're putting numbers and estimates together. Don't leave yourself vulnerable to unexpected events. So if there's ways to cover yourself with insurance or plan B or C. Try to do those. Don't fail to use all the information. So make sure you're accessing all the information you have available. Maybe it's working with a regulatory office, or maybe it's touching base with other farmers available. Maybe it's something you read in a book and you want to find more out, or a news article. Make goals. Don't make goals without including all decision makers. So whether it's farm partners, spouses, family members, people in the business, employees, or maybe even advisors that you work with. And then don't ignore good plans once you develop them. So you've gone through the goal setting process. Don't put them in the stack under there, stick them up on a piece of paper on the farm desk and have them to reference. Examples of goals. So here are just some examples out there, increase website traffic by 20% in the next year, increase market sales by 20% in the next 2 years, add 2 new varieties of tomatoes in a new high tunnel in 2 years. So, okay, those are pretty specific. Okay, we know what we want to do. We've got some targets there. We've got some time frame. Then start thinking about those action items. Website traffic. Well, do you have a website? Is it up to date? What is on it? How would you drive people to it? For market sales, are you going to go to more markets? Are you going to increase the number of products available? How would you get that market sales increase? And then for the high tunnel, what varieties are you looking at? What type of high tunnel are you installing? And, where would you be sourcing it from? Do you have the building pad? Where would it be located on the farm? So think of those large goals, and then what are those action items and implementation steps available to you? Once the goals are created, which goals are most important for the family well-being? Which are short-term goals? And make sure that short-term goals don't conflict with long-term goals that you may have. So perhaps you want a greenhouse, but you're going to erect a high tunnel. Well, is there a plan to use both of those together, or would they be conflicting? Which short-term goals do not support any long-term goals? And then which goals are so important that they should be attained, even if it prevents reaching other goals? So there may be some goals that you've got to get done. I could see that one being sort of financial related, like, perhaps we've got to have irrigation. So even if we don't have funding to put up the high tunnel, we've got to get irrigation because we have to have a water access. So think about those. Which one works together? Which ones can you make happen? So we're going to include a goal setting worksheet, and this is a helpful worksheet when starting to draft these goal statements. It keeps in mind those specific or those SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So you can look at those and who's responsible for them and get those action items sketched out. So goals are really important to individuals and families and the business interrelationships. So, it is helpful because farming is such a family activity. You live there, you probably live there and farm there. And so making sure that everyone's sort of together on that same page. It helps to communicate goals to everyone and set priorities for the farm. Revisiting goals annually kind of gives you time for discussion and time to sort of do that reassessment or monitoring. And then reaching goals really does give that feeling of accomplishment and can improve farm efficiencies. So some monitoring tools, as I mentioned, doing that regular review, perhaps especially if you're just getting started and new to farming, maybe it's a monthly, you sit down to do your monthly bills and you're going to review your goals. Okay. I need to make these phone calls this week, or I need to make these visits this week or this month. Perhaps it's quarterly, perhaps it's annually. Really think about how the plan is working and if you're working towards achieving those goals, and create monitoring tools or measurement progress just so you know. So maybe it's looking at sales, maybe it's drafting and getting construction quotes, maybe it's working with a lender. So, what are those monitoring monitoring tools to measure progress. The next is to evaluate and replan. So, we realize situations may change, be flexible and recognize if an activity needs to be changed for the overall farm and business health, it's okay. Their plans, you're planning them with the best information that you have, and things do change. So try to be flexible and recognize that, and say, okay, now we need to address plan C because A and B have not worked. So let's reassess this. So in summary, here's their kind of cyclical process of the whole farm plan. We're going to assess resources available to the farm. We're going to write a plan with specific goals in mind. We're going to develop monitoring tools to measure progress. And then we're going to evaluate and replan as needed. Thank you.